Not every classic started as a hit. Some of the most iconic movies from the 80s bombed so hard, studios gave up, only to rise again thanks to VHS, midnight screenings, and pure cult energy. From misunderstood sci-fi to twisted comedies, these are the 10 flops that refused to die and changed pop culture anyway. Labyrinth landed in theaters in '86 with Jim Henson behind the camera, George Lucas producing, and David Bowie front and center as a singing Goblin King. It sounded like box office gold. Instead, it was a hard miss, cost $25 million, only pulled in about $14 million domestically. Parents found Bowie unsettling. Test audiences told the studio it felt too dark for younger kids. Critics mostly dismissed it as a strange puppet show. The marketing was confused, trying to sell it as kid-friendly fantasy when it was closer to a surreal fairy tale. Henson himself called the film's box office failure a painful experience, especially since he had poured enormous effort into pioneering new puppetry techniques. It hurt enough that he never directed another feature film. Bowie, at the peak of his fame after the success of his album Let's Dance, was baffled by the lukewarm reaction. But the audience found Labyrinth anyway, at home. VHS rentals saved it. Kids who missed it in theaters rented it again and again. The soundtrack became legendary. Jennifer Connelly, who was just 14 during filming, became a star. Lines like, "You remind me of the babe and it's only forever," became endlessly quoted. Today, Labyrinth is a genuine pop culture staple. Merchandise, comics, and spin-offs continue to appear. It proved some movies just need the quiet of your living room to reveal what they have got. Brazil's failure started long before ticket sales. In '85, Terry Gilliam turned in his bleak, surreal vision to Universal, who hated it. Too dark, too weird, not commercial. Studio boss Sid Sheinberg demanded a Love Conquers All cut with a happy ending. Gilliam refused. The standoff got messy. He took out a full-page Variety ad, even held private screenings for critics. Film critics named it Best Picture, but Universal still barely released it. Just a handful of theaters, no marketing, and most people never saw it. Box office? Barely $10 million on a $15 million budget. Meanwhile, the studio's TV edit aired with a new ending nobody liked. Only after months of fighting did Gilliam's version go wide. On VHS, the real film found its audience. Students rented it for the inventive sets, Jonathan Pryce's lead, and De Niro's scene-stealing as a renegade repairman. Brazil got 2 Oscar nominations. The Aquarela do Brasil theme stuck in your head. The satire of bureaucracy, government surveillance, and paperwork nightmares never went out of style. Now it is film school canon, a warning to directors and a lesson in holding your ground. Some movies you have to fight for. This one was worth it. When David Lynch took on Dune in '84, everyone knew it was a gamble. Universal wanted the next Star Wars, but they got a director famous for doing things his own way. The shoot stretched out in Mexico. Sets were massive, and costs hit $40 million. Lynch's original cut ran over 4 hours. The studio panicked, hacked it down to just over 2 hours. Lynch hated what was left, and took his name off the longer TV edit, using Alan Smithee instead. Dune pulled in about $35 million, nowhere near recouping its budget. Audiences left confused. The cast, Kyle MacLachlan's first film, Sting, Patrick Stewart, Max von Sydow, could not save it from critics who called the plot a mess. Merch deals and toy lines were pulled before they even hit shelves. But at home, Dune started to click. On VHS, people paused and replayed, catching details in the sets and costumes that got missed in theaters. Fans started to see Lynch's wild ambition, the surreal style, and the world-building underneath the chaos. Today, Dune's influence shows up everywhere in science fiction. Hollywood keeps trying to get it right. Lynch's version still stands as proof. Sometimes a failure leaves the deepest imprint. The King of Comedy. Nobody expected The King of Comedy to flop. Scorsese directing, De Niro in the lead, Jerry Lewis as the late-night legend. Sandra Bernhard played Masha, a stalker sidekick who's now seen as a highlight. Shot in 1981 but held back until early '83, the film hit theaters and stalled out. Less than $3 million on a $19 million budget. The studio had no idea how to market it. People showed up thinking it would be Taxi Driver with punchlines. Instead, they got Rupert Pupkin, a delusional stand-up, a botched kidnapping, and way too much awkward reality. Critics split down the middle. Paul D. Zimmerman's script actually won Best Screenplay at Cannes, but De Niro's Pupkin and Lewis's improvising got mixed reactions. Most audiences stayed away, and Scorsese's hot streak hit a wall. But the long game paid off. Cable, home video, and film school screenings rebuilt its reputation. Directors like Todd Phillips and Paul Thomas Anderson pulled from its DNA. Joker and Nightcrawler are direct descendants. Today, King of Comedy is studied for how it nails obsession and the ugly side of fame. No longer a flop. Now it's the blueprint for dark comedies about wanting to be seen, no matter what it costs. The Thing dropped in June '82, just 2 weeks after E.T. changed the Alien game. Nobody wanted monsters when everyone was rooting for friendly extraterrestrials. Universal spent $15 million making it. John Carpenter at the helm. Kurt Russell starring. Rob Bottin, only 22, handling the monster effects. It was a remake of the '51 classic, but critics trashed it for being too mean, too gross, even called it instant junk. It earned only $19 million worldwide. Carpenter got dropped from his Universal deal. Even the score, by Ennio Morricone, got slammed. Nominated for a Razzie that year. For extra salt, The Thing opened the same day as Blade Runner. Both bombed, both later called masterpieces. But VHS kept The Thing alive. Horror fans shared tapes, studied Bottin's practical effects, no CGI, just rubber, hydraulics, and fake blood. Directors like Tarantino and Del Toro became vocal fans.
I think it's one of the greatest horror movies ever made, if not one of the greatest movies. Yeah.
Over the years, The Thing went from outcast to required viewing in every horror marathon. Today, it's praised for its paranoia, bleakness, and monster work. That flop label? Long gone. Sometimes a movie just lands in the wrong summer, but finds immortality once the crowd catches up. Love cult classics and wild Hollywood flops? Subscribe to VintageVerse and hit the bell. Hidden gems, lost legends, and more crazy stories, right here. Don't miss out. In the summer of '82, studios were in a panic. E.T. had theaters packed, The Thing was catching heat for being too bleak, and right in the middle, Warner Brothers rolled out Blade Runner. Ridley Scott directed, with Harrison Ford in the lead, adapting Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The budget hit $28 million. Opening weekend, just $6 million. Final tally, about $27 million in the States. Another flop. Audiences didn't know what to make of it. The story was slow, the voiceover awkward, and the ending got changed by the studio. Critics called it all style, no substance. It opened the very same day as The Thing, two future classics, both bombing together. But the film never went away. Bootlegs, midnight screenings, and alternate cuts kept popping up. The director's cut, then the final cut. Each version pulled more fans. Designers, game studios, and musicians started borrowing the look. Vangelis's electronic score became as influential as the visuals. Many sets were made from old Warner Brothers backlots and props. The Academy did nominate it for art direction and effects, but the real recognition came later. Now, Blade Runner is considered one of the greatest science fiction films ever made. It defines cyberpunk. Its version of future LA is everywhere. It is proof. Sometimes the right audience just needs a few years to find you. Heathers bombed hard when it landed in '89, pulling just $1.1 million in the US and under $3 million worldwide, never coming close to its $3 million budget. The studio could not sell it. Teen suicide, murder, biting satire. Nobody knew how to market a comedy darker than Midnight. Critics mostly shrugged it off, and the R-rating plus school violence controversy kept mainstream theaters away. Michael Lehmann's debut and Daniel Waters' first script, Heathers hit Sundance but did not catch fire until after. It was the anti-Hughes movie. This was not Pretty in Pink or The Breakfast Club. Video stores saved it. The '90s VHS crowd wanted something twisted and got it. You rented it late, laughed at lines you would never admit liking in public, and suddenly everyone at school could quote Winona Ryder and Christian Slater verbatim. And those color-coded blazers, instant legend. Today, it is bigger than ever. A full Broadway musical hit New York in 2014, touring globally after. Then came the TV remake. Messy reviews, but it proved how bulletproof the original had become. Without Heathers, there is no Mean Girls or Jawbreaker. Not bad for a movie that barely limped into theaters and left even quicker. Some movies just need time and VHS to rewrite their story. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen was pure studio chaos. Columbia Pictures expected Terry Gilliam's fantasy to cost around $23 million. Gilliam blew it up to nearly $46 million, huge for 1988. After his Brazil studio battle, execs were already nervous. Lawsuits started flying, locations changed mid-shoot, and sets got built, scrapped, and rebuilt. Then Columbia panicked, barely promoted it, and gave Munchausen a limited release, just 117 screens to start. With no support, theaters dumped it fast. The final damage, $8 million earned. But VHS gave this disaster a second life. You would rent it just to see how much cash Gilliam torched. And once you watched, you noticed no CGI shortcuts, just miniatures, matte paintings, and costumes up for Oscars. The film actually landed 4 Academy Award nominations. Uma Thurman popped up as Venus, Robin Williams played the King of the Moon under a fake name. Fans grew to love it for exactly what nearly ruined Gilliam. Ambition you rarely see. Now, Munchausen's considered Gilliam's gutsiest gamble, a favorite among directors who swear by practical effects. Columbia wrote off most losses overseas, but Munchausen cemented Gilliam's rep as the most stubborn dreamer in Hollywood. Some movies only reveal their value after the smoke clears. Highlander tanked at the US box office back in '86, less than $6 million on a $16 million budget. Critics barely paid attention. Christopher Lambert, a Frenchman playing a Scottish immortal. Sean Connery, a Scotsman cast as a Spanish-Egyptian mentor. It did not make sense. Nobody thought this thing would go anywhere. But overseas, it caught fire. Highlander opened at #1 in the UK. Home video did the rest. Queen's soundtrack pulled people in, Clancy Brown's Kurgan kept them hooked, and suddenly There Can Be Only One was everywhere. The original story, written by a UCLA student, Gregory Wyden. Sequels showed up fast, some so wild or confusing they are infamous now, but the franchise never died. The TV series, led by Adrian Paul, ran 6 seasons and outlasted the movies. Building a loyal fan base, animated shows, comics, video games, all followed. Today, even people who have never seen Highlander know the tagline. Shot in New York and the Highlands, it has a look nothing else matches. Flop or not, Highlander proved that with the right fans, and a little luck, a movie really can live forever. Big Trouble in Little China had one of the wildest elevator pitches in Hollywood. Kung fu battles, ancient magic, monsters, and comedy jammed into one movie. Fox signed on, hoping for another Indiana Jones, but got something nobody could label. The movie dropped in '86, up against James Cameron's Aliens. Fox had no idea how to market it, running bland action ads that missed the weirdness completely. John Carpenter actually wanted Clint Eastwood or Jack Nicholson for the lead, but Fox pushed hard for Kurt Russell, who played Jack Burton like John Wayne on the wrong set, a loudmouth sidekick who thinks he's the hero. It bombed out of the gate. $2.7 million opening weekend, finishing at $11 million total on a budget over $20 million. Critics called it a mess. Too silly for horror fans, too strange for action junkies, and totally offbeat for everyone else. What made the failure sting even more for Carpenter? All that studio meddling and disappointment pushed Carpenter out of big-budget Hollywood for good. But cable TV and VHS changed everything. People discovered what Fox missed: Russell's clueless swagger, the sidekick as hero twist, and the film's wild energy. Today, Big Trouble is a cult legend, quoted, referenced, and imitated, but never matched. It flopped big, then found immortality in living rooms. Every flop on this list left a mark. Some sparked new genres, others found their audience years after the lights went down. If you want more stories about Hollywood's biggest turnarounds and forgotten legends, subscribe to VintageVerse and hit the bell. More hidden gems and wild tales coming soon. Don't miss out.